All right, everybody, welcome to the second episode of the Engineering Success Podcast. My name is Daniel, and I'm your host. And today I am joined by my first guest. He's the reason why when I was in kindergarten and I told my teacher what I wanted to be, I was actually able to follow through with it. Unlike some of my friends who said astronaut, I was able to be like my dad, who's an engineer. So without any further ado, welcome, Mr. Douglas Dahlinger. It's kind of weird to address you that way, but that's how I'm going to do it for this purpose.
Well, welcome, son.
So the title of this episode and the title of this interview is the series is called "How I Got Here." Mm-hmm. So your "How I Got Here" that I've written for you is how I got here, retired at 55 after a 33-year-long career. Now, I think that that's especially impressive, and it's something that a lot of engineers aspire to achieve, which is why I have kind of brought you on and asked you that question. So with that being said, I guess what I usually would do is ask people to tell me where they currently work. Now, you're retired. I won't tell people how long you've been retired for, but go ahead and tell us, where did you graduate from, and what was your specific major and any concentrations or minors that you had while you were at Grove City?
Okay, so what you kind of leadway there, but I decided to go to Grove City College. I kind of followed in my father and brother's footsteps in that area, and my father was an engineer, so that was kind of part of my mindset as a young child as well. So they both, my father had graduated, of course, many years before in mechanical engineering, and my brother was going through accounting at Grove City College. And when I enrolled as a freshman, he was a senior at that time.
Okay. And where is, for anybody that doesn't know, where is Grove City College located?
Okay, so Grove City College is in northwestern Pennsylvania. It's about 60 to 70 miles north of Pittsburgh, PA, which everybody should be familiar with. And I grew up just south of Pittsburgh, about 10 miles south.
Okay. And so did you say what concentration of engineering that you specialized in?
I ended up going with electrical, and I stayed with it all the way through. Where a lot of the kids started in electrical and ended up venturing in other different fields of engineering. But electrical is the one that interests me the most, so I stuck with it. And I'm glad I did.
That's good. I'm glad you did too. It worked out really well for me. I on the other hand was not able to go the electrical route. I'm not smart enough for that. So I appreciate people that do though. So you said that you knew that you wanted to whenever you were a kid. Can you kind of elaborate on how you knew that you wanted to be an engineer?
As a kid, I was very fascinated in taking things apart and figure out how they work. And if anything was like broke, I pretty much asked for it, and I didn't have any problem getting it. So I would like to take it apart and figure out, now, how did it break and how does it work? So I always had a fascination with that at a young age. I would say probably the time I was 7 or 8 years old, people started, relatives mainly, would they have a watch, wristwatch. Of course, they're all mechanical back then. So when they didn't work, they just tossed them to me, and I just said, well, great. So I'd take them apart, and more times than not, I could get them working again. So I just had a lot of interest, probably more mechanical actually at a young age. And it wasn't really until I was a freshman in high school where we were fortunate enough that our school had a vocational type programming where you could look at 6 different vocations during the course of my entire freshman year. And of those, the 2 that caught my most interest were drafting, like mechanical type engineering, and then electrical engineering. And then once I really started diving into the electrical engineering course, it was a 6 weeks course, and it just kind of caught my attention the most. And it might have had something to do about this new thing called video games that were just starting to come about. There's a thing that some people may know. It was called Pong.
Yeah.
And we actually were able to, our class was actually able to develop the game set Pong. And so we actually got the opportunity to go through all the etching process and from the build the board from the ground up and package it and the joysticks and everything. And we came up with, by the end of that 6 weeks, we were playing Pong. And
That's
that
awesome.
kind of really impressed me because we'd never seen anything quite like that playing a video game. Now we're talking, this was in the early to mid 70s. So it was pretty exciting to me. So it never really, I just said that once I finished my freshman year, I think electrical engineering is a place for me.
Yeah. I think that's really cool that your school had a program for that to kind of help people decide. I feel like a lot of people get to college and a lot of people have been told that they want to be an engineer and they're like, okay, I guess I at least have to try to start out, but they don't necessarily have any idea of what it would be like for them. So it's really cool to see that you were able to at least kind of sample it a little bit before you kind of dipped your feet all the way in whenever you went to college.
Yeah, it was really a blessing. I don't know. I don't know if that program really existed for many years before or after, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, all the things we got to do were fun, but it kind of gave me an idea of what I thought I might like to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah, and it's obviously worked out really well for you to get you to this point. So let's work our way back. So right now you're retired. What did you
Correct.
do right before you retired?
What did I do right before I retired? Well, I worked my whole career was with started with General Dynamics, and General Dynamics got bought out by Lockheed, and Lockheed got merged with Lockheed Martin Marietta, and it became Lockheed Martin.
Which they are now,
So,
right?
which they are now.
Yeah.
You know, I actually ended up, and it's not that unusual looking back at a lot of the people I work with. They stayed at the same company all those years as well. It's kind of like if you didn't leave in the first 5 years, there's a pretty good chance you're gonna work your whole career at that particular company, and it worked out well. And then, of course, they had a defined pension there, which is kind of made you think, well, if you just get the time in, then you're going to have a pension coming out of it, which got phased out at about, I was there about 20 years and it got phased out for the new hires. So that was kind of an incentive to stay. So, I mentioned a little bit about my background. I like to take things apart and figure out how things work and try to fix things. Well, just like the job opportunities lined up for me to get into test engineering, avionic test engineering, which is testing the avionics on an aircraft and all the different systems of the aircraft. So my whole career is built on the avionics side of aviation for the F-16 and a little bit of the F-22 fighter program. So.
Okay. Now, I know that you might not be able to go in complete detail, but could you kind of work your way back on the different roles that you had throughout your
Mhm.
career, how long you were in each role, and what kind of we'll work our way back, and then I also want to ask you about decisions you made along the way
Sure.
with those roles.
So what they routinely hired you in as an associate engineer back in that day. And they gave you basically a 6 month, they kind of had you on probation to figure out whether you were going to fit in.
Hmm.
And if you fit in well, then you got a promotion after 6 months, which was kind of nice. So things worked out for me. I kind of really enjoyed diving into the work I was doing, which I'll explain a little bit. It was interesting in the sense that my particular job, I got to design a product from conceptual standpoint and take it through all phases of development to actually selling it off to the customer at my facility and actually delivering it to the end user facility. So I got to see you know the whole process and seeing it come to conclusions. It wasn't a thing where I could have to hand it off to somebody else. I was ultimately responsible for it for all the phases, and those phases involved actually some drafting concepts and a lot of coding concepts, and then with modeling different avionic interfaces. And so basically, I was a an avionics test engineer. So,
That was your first role.
and it was it was digital depot. There at that time they broke it up into digital depot, analog depot, and microwave depot, depending on the avionics system, whether it was primarily of digital components, analog components, or microwave type components. So from basically the first 9 years, I was in the digital depot environment. And through that, I worked my way up. I think I had 3 promotions in that time frame, and then became a group lead over probably 5 to 10 engineers. And then from there, I went over to the F-22 program, which
because that was F-16 or
that was F-16 program.
okay. So then you moved to F-22.
I moved to F-22. It was in a kind of a very secured building environment. It was kind of interesting at that time. And because it was leading edge technology, the F-22 by the mid 90s. And at that time, my role was overseeing subcontractors.
Okay.
The subcontractors, so I would travel pretty extensively at that time and then have a lot of telecons, making sure that the subcontractors were on task for developing their ability to test the avionics on the F-22. So instead of me actually doing it or managing my own group at Lockheed Martin, I was overseeing others. And I was in that environment for about 2 to 2.5 years at that time.
Okay.
And then I went back, came back into the depot, but instead of digital depot, I wanted to analog depot.
Okay.
And then after a short time, it became the lead over the entire analog depot. And different test equipment. Avionics were slightly different because it was more analog components than digital. But whether it was analog or digital depot, similar type systems. Just a little different products basically. Now these are at this time we're testing avionic boards, so we're like a PC board at this stage when you're in the depot. And then eventually my career went from there. It went to when the depot, then as things got more sophisticated and the cost came down for those printed circuit board, didn't make sense so much to replace them at their level. We went into the box level, intermediate support level, which an avionic box for a system might include half a dozen to a dozen boards.
Okay.
So at that point, we tested it at that level, intermediate level.
And what part of the plane were all these?
Well, it could come out of anywhere. It could be the weapon systems. It could be, control, human control systems. So
HMIs.
Yes. And, just optics. I mean, you name it, just about anything that the customer felt warranted for us to develop the capability to test it rather than to throw it away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they look at the mean time between failures of the product and the cost and such of the whole box or the card, when I was doing depot, and they assess that and find out whether it's worthy of testing it or just to throw it out.
Okay.
And so, but every system, yes, for every avionics system, just about on the aircraft, we touched our hands in. So we had to be able to support them all, basically.
Okay.
And what I will say is that it involved our end customer started out just the U.S. Air Force,
Mm-hmm.
and as the F-16 became more and more, as it got more and more units were sold to other countries, friendlies to the United States. And those countries needed to develop their own way to test their avionics as well. So it gave me an opportunity to travel abroad to support other countries as well.
And that was mostly to South Korea, right? Is where you were.
I've South Korea, and then I traveled to Europe as well. We called it EPAF, various countries, Belgium, Netherlands, Sweden, and such over there that we had to support their needs as well.
Okay. So then, so you're analog lead, and is that kind of like the last role that you held before you?
Okay. No. So from analog lead, I became,
keep on going the path.
I became on that intermediate where they test the whole box at that point.
Yeah.
So when you're at the box level, you're dealing with, the system has it all analog and digital. And so it could have microwave as well involved in that box. So once you get to this intermediate level, so I became a lead over, I think about 15 to 20 engineers at that time.
Okay.
And so we worked at that time, we were working with Israel and the United Arab Emirates, two countries that were not necessarily friendly to each other, but we were delivering product to both. And so we, that's where it went as far as the intermediate level at that point. And then later in my career, it became, we had opportunities had opportunities with other countries as well, but not always did they get on contract. So, but the last depot one I did was with Korea, where I spent about a month in house, not only selling the product, but actually setting up their depot over there and teaching the people how to use the equipment as well.
Okay, cool. So then where are we on the timeline here?
So right now, so now going into the final phase, is we still had a lot of basically all the stuff that we had developed and built and designed, which, by the way, I didn't really explain it, but it was about a 2.5 to 3 year process to get this support equipment designed and developed. And then later, more and more countries, we've already had the product designed and developed. So we would create copies of our avionics support equipment to sell to those other countries. And then at that stage, there's some components that are no longer available. So you have to do some minor redesigns of different components and such, so those products can still be built slightly different. It's called a change order process, which is involved. So we were selling to a lot of different countries at the very end. Didn't always get the opportunity for myself personally to visit in-house on those, but so the final phase was all box level type support equipment, intermediate support equipment. So I carried that all the way, and it's amazing that it ended up still with the F-16. 33 years from the time I started the F-16, we were just developing the very first support equipment, I think about a year before I started. And then they were still doing it. And as of a few years ago, I visited some of my old coworkers, and they were still working on that today. So it's amazing how long that aircraft has lasted. It's the largest sold number of F-16s of any fighter aircraft ever built.
Wow.
So it's pretty amazing that a whole career could be made that many years
with one plane.
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm.
Now, did you have opportunities we have the F-35 that went into production before you retired. So did you have other opportunities to pursue newer planes, and did you turn them down? And if so, why?
Right. So, there were other opportunities along the way. There's always the opportunity presented as far as a certain promotion to move. It became where after a while, you really weren't going to get promoted where you were unless you moved into another job opportunity within the company doing something else different. And so there were times where now I considered that, but a lot of times it would mean more time away from the home, basically, and or the job came home with me at night. So I kind of had to make the decision that I want to stick with 40 to 45 hours a week.
Yeah.
Or did I want that to bloom to 60, 65 hours a week and not have my family time? So I did have several other interviews. And when I found out that it was going to be a little bit more intrusive on my time, I didn't really want to commit to it at that point. I didn't have a financial need to look for a promotion. So it would have been more just whether it was rewarding enough. And to be honest with you, I didn't think it was worth the time for myself personally to to take on that, to give the company 60 to 65 hours a week.
Yeah.
So
No,
I did
that
not.
makes sense. That makes sense. So your work-life balance, your entire career was pretty much 40 to 45 hours a week.
Pretty much. I mean, there were some times when you might have a month where you're getting ready when the due date of a product is coming up, and for some reason you might be a little bit behind schedule, and there'll be times when you'd be working overtime and such.
Yeah.
But
For the most part, you had a good balance.
I try to keep it a good life balance. My father, he got into management kind of early in his career, and he spent about 70 hours a week, 60 to 70 hours a week. So we didn't have much time during the week with my father. So that was one thing that I didn't want to carry over once I had a family.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I appreciate it. Worked out well for me. Worked out well for me. So that's obviously one of the major key decision points that you made to get to your career as it was. Were there any other kind of major career decision points that you made along the way that kind of set yourself up for success?
Well, I mean, there's different opportunities. When I was first hired, there's a lot of people that were working. They would work for 1 to 2 years experience, and then they would just travel to different. They were called job shoppers. Basically, they were contract engineers, and they would go from one place to the next. The money was good. There was no benefits, but the money was good. But so I would say there's probably about one out of every four people that hired in kind of did that. And so I knew right off that that really wasn't what I wanted, to just run around just to seek the higher money, because those people really didn't have any strong feelings to the company. They're just making money.
Yeah.
And so that I knew that wasn't right for me. And as it came about, once you're with a company that has a pension for so many years, then it kind of makes it harder for you to leave it, because you really do give up a lot if you leave once you're vested in a company pension.
Yeah.
So you have to think about that. So um, I don't have any regrets the way I did it.
Yeah.
I think I enjoyed what I did, and after a while. Once you've been there, done that, then it's either time to move on in one way or the other. Now,
Yeah.
is it time to move on for something totally different? Is it something to, you know, or is it time to think about, well, doing what you want to do? And
Yeah.
with retirement, there's one thing in life you can never get more of is time. So
Yeah.
it came a point that I thought that well, I was always working for. I have to say, at a pretty young age, I'd say, um, I came to this mindset, and my brother came kind of brought this to my attention after he was working probably too many hours. He goes, "Wouldn't it be nice just to retire early?" And so it kind of got that in my head. So I started investing quite a bit through the 401k and outside the 401k to try to put myself in a position where I could retire early. So I kind of was looking towards that end game of being able to retire early. So I don't know what else to say
Yeah. No,
regarding that. I can.
yeah, no. So I'm curious. So would you say that that's the only reason why you were able to retire early? Are there any other people or influences that have made it a little easier to retire early?
Well, I'd say my wife made it easier too, because she decided she didn't want to work, but I mean she didn't want to retire, I should say. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so of course that always makes it easier, and
Yeah.
also for when your wife is supportive of you, that makes
Yeah.
it a lot easier as well. But to be honest with you, even if she had started to retire the same year I did, we could have done it. So
Yeah. That's awesome.
it was not dependent on that. It just made it a lot easier.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So we've gone the pathway on your career, and we've gone to retirement. So now I want to kind of take it back a little bit. So I want to ask a couple things that kind of pertain to kids that are in college that are, looking at what the workforce will look like for them. So my first question is what class from college that you took did you find most applicable for your career? And then you might have to give a little bit of a synopsis on the class.
I mean, the microelectronics class which is the class I probably used the most in my career, was the most interesting to me and probably the most valuable. Some calculus and physics as well is important because anything in engineering, you gotta be strong in math, and you have to have an interest in math. If you don't like math, engineering is probably not for that person. So, so I'd say that they were the classes that were probably, physics and dynamics was also were strong. Physics, dynamic, statics.
Yeah. And then how much of the things that you did on the job, and this might be a silly question because I have my answer for this question, but how many of the things that you did on the job were things that you directly learned in college versus how many things did you do on the job that were things you kind of had to learn on the job?
So probably less than 5% is actually what you learned in college, which directly carried over.
Yeah.
Because when some of the interface design definitely carried over for the electronics side of things, but a lot of the overall product itself didn't directly carry over. The test equipment didn't carry over. The software language, which we used, an automatic test equipment language, did not. That was nothing that we learned in college. So, so there's not so much. But the main thing about college, it teaches you how to think, and it gives you challenges, and to see if you're up for the challenges.
Yeah.
Because when you get into engineering, you don't know what the next challenge is going to be.
Yeah.
And you have to, and also you need to be somebody that really wants to problem solve.
Yeah.
When I got an opportunity last year to talk to graduating seniors and try to get them interested in engineering, I said, first I asked them, do you like math? And most of them will say yes. If they just say, no, I don't like it at all, I said, well, maybe engineering's not right for you.
That's fair.
And then I would show them the building. Well, do you ever want to know how that works up there, or this works over there? Or does it intrigue you? Does it give you intellectual curiosity? And if they say yes, I said, well, then, you got the stuff what an engineer needs. Because an engineering mind is always thinking about how things work, how to fix things, how to improve things. So that's my that's what I tell kids if they're be interested in engineering, but it's not for everybody, of course.
Yeah, no, it definitely isn't for everybody. Even I think the rate of major switching at my university was about 30%, 66%, 2/3 of all the people, and they don't pull you. A lot of people hear that statistic where the professor pulls people into the classroom and says, "Look to your left, look to your right." Both of those people won't be here. They don't do that, but it just kind of naturally does that, because even people who think it's for them, it ends up not being for them. But so you said that college teaches you about problem solving and teaches you how to get there. What did your school do that was really well? Like, here's your chance to kind of, I know you're repping just like I'm repping right here. I know you're repping. So what did your university do well? And if theoretically that they still do this today, why would somebody consider going to Grove City College for an engineering program?
Well, the good thing about it is it is a smaller school. So, I mean, in my class of engineering, and like you said, the same thing happened to us as well. My freshman year, there was probably, we weeded out 2 out of every 3 kids that are in engineering. And not only on top of that, a lot of them migrated from electrical to we had a thing called management engineering, which is kind of an overall management. And I know I had several friends that ended up going there, and then some of them, then they went from there out of engineering. But so I mean, having a small size is nice. Working on projects together, getting a lot of attention from the professor, if you have issues in that, being very available is very
Yeah.
nice to have. So, there's something to be said for class size. And they had a pretty good endowment too. So they were getting good modern equipment. In fact, it was kind of funny to me. We had for our computer, it was called a VAX at that time. I hired in a General Dynamics, and it took 3 years before they got the VAX, which was needed for us to do to really help us in our job.
Okay. And then you're
So
basically already the pro at running
well,
it
yeah, I
because
mean,
you
it's
did it in
like
college. Yeah.
it's kind of funny when it came in. Like, I think I was there 2 years maybe when it's like, well, this is what I had my sophomore year in college.
Yeah.
So they were on the forefront as far as that concerned. So, um, but it's a great it's been a great school. I highly recommend anybody that lives in that particular general area. But it's funny, I had someone called me and they were from Houston. So, you know, kids from all over go to Grove City as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've heard it. It sounds like a great school, and it sounds like it obviously prepared you well. You had a great career after. What kind of college student were you? Were you like a? I'm not asking for GPA here, but were you like an A, like a straight A student? Were you a kind of guy that was just barely floating above water, or you have a good balance there? Were you super involved on campus, or were you just more of a I'm here for school. I'm doing that. That's all I'm doing. Where'd you fall on that spectrum?
Well, I was probably, in high school, I was probably just an A/B student. I was not a
Yeah.
straight A student by any means. And then in college, I was a BC student, basically. Although, I probably could have been a lot better if I wasn't in engineering because it was very taxing
Yeah.
time to do well. And but I still had pretty good life balance. I was in a social fraternity there, and in other different clubs as well. So it is important still to have a certain amount of life balance as well, and to have other brothers or sisters to uh, to help you along your path in college.
Yeah. And then you said you were an A/B student in high school. Do you think it,
Mhm.
it transferred, the skills and things the habits that you had in high school? Did you say that kind of directly transferred to college, or you kind of had to kind of give up a little bit of
Mhm.
a little bit just to stay alive, basically, because of the program? Yeah.
Well, the program was pretty intense. So my study habits had to get better when I went to college. I have to admit, maybe my study habits weren't quite as good. And when I was in high school, I also had a part-time job, so I worked 20 hours a week
Hmm.
in high school, so that I could save money for my college expense back in that day. That was in year. There wasn't really a whole lot of people did student loans back in that day. It's pretty much you had to come up with the money either yourself or your family.
Yeah.
Um, so I probably didn't study as much looking back as I think you did or your brother does.
Yeah.
But so I probably wasn't quite as prepared as I should have been. But I got up in a hurry. It didn't take long before it kicked in the realization of what it was going to require, because I didn't want to be the other two guys that was going to be or leaving the program of electrical engineering. I wanted to be one of the ones to make it out through it.
Yeah. That makes sense. So kind of coming to wrapping this up here
Mhm.
towards the advice portion. What kind of closing advice would you give to somebody that's in high school right now,
Mhm.
and that maybe they don't have it all together yet, or maybe they do, but they want to be an engineer? That they're at this point, they've made the decision, and they want to get there.
Mhm.
What's that one, the first thing that they can do to put themselves on the path to getting there?
Well, first of all, they have to have the drive. It can't be just something that, oh, I think that'd be nice to do. I mean,
Yeah.
you really have to have the drive for it, and you have to work for it. So it would be good to have mentors and other support people that can kind of help you in your educational process to kind of push you along. So I highly recommend any mentors that they can come up with, or support group to kind of push them along the path. because if you're not really self-motivated, it's going to be hard to stay on the path because it's a very rigorous subject. Now it's very rewarding. I say engineering can be extremely rewarding job because I got a lot of satisfaction out of problem solving and being able to do things, to make products and to see the products in use and what they could do to make things just a little bit better. So it's a very rewarding career, and there's a lot of people that are looking out for engineers, for their in-house problem solving or for other jobs as well, just because of the being able to make it through or the rigorous program of the degree itself. So
Yeah, that's great. So I just got to the end here and I realized I missed two questions. So I'm going to
okay,
ask
go
them.
ahead.
So first one is, what was it like working for a defense contractor? Were there any things that you had to some people kind of have apprehensions about that. So I wanted to know
Sure.
what your thought was on that.
Well, one of the biggest irony there is I know when I accepted the job at first, my dad said, "We know defense contractors, it's kind of up and down. They get a contract, they hire you, and they don't have another contract, they let you go."
33 years.
33 years, never let go. So
Yeah.
that's kind of irony there. The thing is, your time has to be well documented when you're working for a defense contractor. So you had a time card sheet every day, and I might be charging to a dozen different serial numbers or charge numbers to allocate. I had to allocate my time, so it was kind of a little rigorous on that, but it was required because we had U.S. Air Force oversight mainly, Department of Defense oversight when we would get audited and such. And so you had to be diligent as far as how you recorded your time and how you used your time, because it wasn't like it was just a one charge number, or you didn't have to deal with a charge number. So that's a little bit different. I think in some of the civilian jobs, you may not have to account such as that. So that's a
Okay.
big difference. But also, you get to meet some interesting characters in
Yeah.
the Department of Defense as well. But got opportunities to go to Air Force bases and such, and be able to put a little bit of tag a few extra days of personal around that and go skiing and such. So it was nice. I enjoyed
Yeah.
it.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And then and I guess, yeah, if people don't want to work for a defense contractor for other reasons, it's just probably just not the right fit for them anyways. So then my other question is that how did you get your job with Lockheed coming out of college? Did you do any specific networking, or were you involved in any kind of clubs that help you have connections while you were in college?
Actually, no.
No,
When,
nothing.
no. I just I think it was a God thing. When I graduated college in '83, the market was not very good. It was we were coming out of a stagflation time and high interest rates, and the market was not very strong. And then the defense contracts were starting to build up under Ronald Reagan, the president that was wanting to defeat the Soviets in the Cold War. So me coming to Texas at that time, it just the F-16 was ramping up among other programs as well at that time. There's a lot of demand in the defense contract area at that time. So when I came out of Grove City, basically up in that Pennsylvania area and such in the Northeast, jobs were far and few between. Most of them are power companies, to be honest with you. At that time, the utilities, of course, never slow down. So I really didn't want to work in a utility power company. I was more electronic. I want to use my electrical engineering degree in electronics versus power systems and such. And so when my parents had moved down to Texas my junior year of college, and it just allowed me to have the opportunity that General Dynamics was hiring a lot of people at that time. And
And then it just,
they're ramping up their program. In fact, they ramped it up. I'm thinking in the time. I think it went from 9 to 30,000 people in that one
Wow.
particular facility during that. And I was kind of like toward the front end of that. So at that time, internships and networking and that was not basically the networking was did your dad or did your uncle or the guy across the street
Yeah.
basically did he work somewhere and it could get you an offer type of thing. Other than that, you're pretty much on your own. You're spitting out the resumes and you were pounding the pavement, visiting the different companies, which I did quite a bit actually before I landed the job with General Dynamics. I pounded the pavement every week, trying to get interviews and such. But
Yeah. No Indeed back then. No LinkedIn to help.
no, LinkedIn was probably right around 2000 time frame, I think,
Yeah,
is
it's a
when that
little late
became.
for you.
Yeah, it was a little bit. I was already pretty with LinkedIn by the time LinkedIn came out.
And then you stuck with it for 33 years with one company, and then you were able to retire, and now you're just, what are you doing now? And then we'll leave with that.
I keep trying to keep busy, doing little home projects, taking my engineering to a little bit different level into building and construction and such. But things to keep me busy. I'm going to be looking for other volunteer opportunities here. I was doing that for a while, and I'm going to be doing that again.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for taking the time and sitting here for this interview. It's naturally turned into a pretty good one here. I don't know exactly what time we started, but we definitely went for a good amount of time. But thank you, Mr. Douglas Dahlinger, for that interview. And right after this little break, we'll go into the next segment of the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and have a blessed day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Before we get to the questions, remember you can submit your own questions at engring.success@gmail.com.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the first half of the podcast and enjoyed that interview. And let's go ahead and get into the questions. So the first question is, graduating in a month, feeling inadequate, and have zero motivation to apply for jobs. That's the title. And they say, if you're a junior or below, take my advice now and build up your resume. Connect with your professor, do research, secure as many internships as you can, add as much shit as you can so the job hunt is easy once you graduate. I'm currently hating myself and I can't even bring myself to apply for jobs. I became exactly what I tried to avoid, a graduating senior with nothing to show for it. Never had an internship, never did research. I don't have anything useful on my resume to help me land a job apart from my senior design project. I worked all throughout college, so I never joined an organization, never connected with my professors. I don't even have people I can ask for a recommendation letter. I seriously hate myself right now. Don't be like me. Well, that's a difficult situation to be in. I hurt for you. You've worked hard. You've worked all the way throughout a engineering degree program that was rigorous, and you worked all the way through college, and you have a lot to you worked really hard, and you have a lot you did, but you don't feel like you have anything to show for it. But I'll tell you this, I know a couple people that were in my engineering cohort that were in a similar boat, but now they all have jobs. So what I would say is leverage the connections you have with some of your peers and start having those conversations. Try to reach out to your career services department, see if they can connect you with alumni from your university that know how rigorous your engineering program was. They can help kind of get your foot in the door. You'll be surprised what a super enthusiastic alumni like myself will try to do for even the most random of students from their university. And the other thing I'd recommend is that instead of only shotgun firing off as many applications as possible into different online portals, still do that, but also be as strategic as you can. So spend as much time as possible putting yourself into a position where you can actually talk to someone. So again, the alumni, even reaching out to a couple of your classmates. You'll be surprised that maybe one of them knew somebody or knew of an opportunity, but it wasn't quite in their location that they wanted to be in, and they could recommend you or give you a recommendation. But again, the most important thing is to be really strategic with your time and to continually keep on working. The thing about internships is, they're very valuable. But one of the biggest things that people get, and I got out of my internship, was learning how to be an employee and learning how to be a part of the workforce. And that's something that you have as somebody that worked all the way through college. So definitely throw that on your resume and talk to the things. If it was a person-to-person interfacing job where you're like working retail or something like that, talk about, or if you're a server or something like that, talk about how you developed really great communication skills in that role. You can always hype up any kind of job that you did. But for anybody else that's trying to avoid being in this situation, I kind of have this, I guess I could call it a formula that I've developed that I think is the way that you should be spending each year, 4 years, if you do a traditional 4-year program, to get yourself in a position where you have a job offer your senior year, or at least set yourself up to have success and most likely have a job offer. So the summer after your freshman year, that's the summer that you do your last family vacation or you do research on campus, because usually it's easier to get a research opportunity after your freshman year. If you need to take any extra classwork to make sure you graduate on time, that's the summer to do it. And then you're likely not going to be able to land an internship at all related to your field unless you have nepotism or you just happen to just know somebody that can really get you an internship. So what I recommend doing is working some kind of job tangentially related to your desired industry. For example, if you were considering going into the construction industry, consider going out into the oil fields or getting a job as like a helper or just some kind of entry-level job that is related to the field that you want to work in. Then the summer after your sophomore year, that is where you're trying to get whatever paid internship that you can get your hands on, because that's the experience that you have that is going to get you your good internship. I mean, not to say that people can't land good internships the summer after their sophomore year, but it's just harder to do. But the most important thing you can do is get yourself some experience so that way your summer after your junior year, which is your most important summer, you have a good internship because of the experience you had your sophomore year. It's really, you might think this is crazy, but a lot of companies actually prefer to hire interns that have previous internship experience, which is kind of the whole twist around thing. Like, oh, you want me to have experience, but I need to do your internship to get experience. So why don't you just give me an internship? Just some of the companies, they still require that experience. But the good thing about getting an internship with one of those companies is those companies generally have formal internship programs that are designed to give people job offers afterwards. So if you follow this pathway of working some kind of job summer after freshman year, getting any kind of paid internship you can the summer after your sophomore year, and then getting a formal internship from a formal internship program your summer after your junior year, then likely by the end of the first semester of your senior year, you will have a job offer in hand for when you graduate. And at that point, you might have to make a decision about whether or not you're going to take it or not. But as long as the offer letter that you send is non-binding, then you can always accept. And then if you have a better opportunity, then eventually back out unless they make you sign a contract. So that's kind of the pathway that you can follow to kind of keep yourself out of that situation. All right. Next question. The question is titled A Slightly Different Question. Nice. Does anyone ever feel like you need a creative outlet in your life to balance out the nature of what is required from an engineer? How did you find your creative outlet? That's a great question. And that's the title of the question. So, here's the full question. So I've been working in the electrical and automation world for just over 10 years. I love what I do and I love my company, but lately I have been feeling more and more that I need something to express myself creatively, since there is almost no way for me to do that during my day job. I started dabbling in writing a fantasy novel, and I'm looking into game design in the next few months. It offers a kind of excitement and engagement that I've not felt in a long time, and I simultaneously like having both my engineering career and this other form of thinking in my life. It has been so refreshing. Has anyone else gone through this? What did it look like for you? Well, this is kind of my creative outlet. My second passion to my career is other people's careers, and I've always taken an interest in trying to be helpful to help other people reach a point in their career, because I feel like I've made so many mistakes along the way, and I've been very fortunate to get to the position that I'm in now. But my main hobby is this YouTube channel. I get to exercise my desire to work on videos with this video camera. I'm learning about audio engineering with this microphone I have here and this pop filter and the Audacity program that I'm looking at. That's kind of been one of my creative outlets. And then also, I've also taken up hobbies such as Toastmasters, which is, again, kind of career related. So I guess you could call me a uber nerd. But then the other thing that I do for fun is that I played piano growing up, and I play the piano every once in a while. And then I also played golf in high school and in middle school. So I've started playing golf pretty regularly again and taking that seriously. And it's been a great distraction and creative outlet for me. And I recommend that taking up a hobby, even if it doesn't have to be a serious one, and it doesn't have to be one that necessarily results in income or anything like that. But I think that definitely it's a very valuable thing. And this has been my hobby. So good question. Next question. Looking back to your college education, which one class is most relevant to your career today? That's the title of the question. And the body of the question is, if you don't mind, include your area of concentration: mechanical, electrical, biomedical, etc., etc. So for me, my concentration was mechanical, but I think the most useful class that I took was not necessarily a mechanical class, though. Shout out to fluids, heat transfer. Those classes were definitely the classes that I theoretically would be using the most if I was working as a technical mechanical engineer. But for me personally, the classes I got the most value out of were engineering design classes. I was fortunate enough to attend a university that we actually had an engineering design class every single semester instead of just the last 2 semesters in our senior year. And I found that very valuable because that experience working on projects with team members, learning how to manage people's personalities, dealing with another person who has a very similar personality to myself, and learning from them how to deal with me, and vice versa. That's very valuable for me, and that's also transferred really well to the workplace. I've learned how to solve problems autonomously and work in teams, and that's been very, very valuable to me. On top of that, those design projects involved a little bit of writing and reports, and along with my lab coursework, they all prepared me very well for my career, because regardless of what kind of engineering you do and what kind of role you take in, but especially in my role, being able to effectively communicate to people, often written, is super valuable. So I've found my lab courses and my writing that I did in my design classes to very helpful to help me improve my fluency in communicating engineering and technical content. All right. And the last question. Do you miss engineering school? Is the title of the question. Hi all, I'll be graduating this fall, and I've been back and forth between thinking I'll be very happy that I'm finished with school and also thinking that I may miss it in the future. To those that have graduated, do you miss school, and why or why not? I do and I don't. I miss having my friends really close around me all the time. I miss being able to not really have to plan anything, and all my friends are just kind of there. So whenever I wanted to be social, I could just kind of be social. I also missed the kind of camaraderie that I had with my peers, as engineering, is kind of a struggle. So we had that kind of, I guess, that shared mutual suffering that we had together, and that was a nice bond. And I'm fortunate to be able to hang out with those peers every once in a while. But for the most part, it is pretty nice working, because I have generally a work-life balance, and it's also nice to make money and be able to afford things and plan for my future. So yeah, I miss school. It's one of those things that once you realize you're not going to ever be able to go back, at least I don't want to go back because that was hard. But once you realize you can't, that's a part of your life that's over, then definitely you miss it. But I'm grateful to be in the workforce now and have my evenings for the most part during the week to myself. So that's it. All right. So those are the 4 questions for this week's podcast. So thanks for tuning in. And this is the Engineering Success Podcast. This was episode 2. I'm Daniel Dahlinger, and I'll hear from you hopefully next week. Thanks.
I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. My thoughts get complicated. I cannot explain in layman's. Never losing focus because I ain't chasing payments. Still playing in the basement while I'm working on arrangements. They heard the kid in 50 countries. Thank God that's amazing. But I'd rather thank Spotify. They put me on the station.